Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz bassist and composer Gui Duvignau. We get into his brand new 2024 CD Live in Red Hook. He took advantage of an ideal performance space in Brooklyn and the brilliance of two outstanding musicians that he knew would provide a performance worthy of posterity. This musician was born in France, lived in Morocco as an infant. He grew up in São Paulo, Brazil, and his studies led him from Paris to Portugal and finally to New York City, where he has been based for the past 6 years. He's got quite a story. Enjoy.
Hey, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the interest and for reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into the new project, I'd like to cover what we've lived through. You know, looking at the calendar now, 4 years ago, the pandemic began and really sent a lot of ripples through the musicians community. I'm curious, how did you survive that time period and how did it change you?
Well, I guess I survived the way everyone did. You know, I had a place to live, I had food, so that was, good. I wasn't sick. I think those were the big upsides on my end, because I know, I was in New York and I couldn't leave. I mean, I could leave, but leaving would have meant not being able to come back into the country because of my visa situation, because they were, during the pandemic, the borders were only open for permanent residents and American citizens. So I was here in lockdown, so I was actually, I didn't have it rough. That's what I meant to say. I was seeing how stuff was going around, in New York City. It was crazy. So thankfully, I was okay and I survived it well. Work-wise, though, it was pretty challenging, right? Because everything stopped. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that from other people, but everything stopped all of a sudden. And I hadn't been in New York for that long. It had been like a year and a half that I'd been here, so I was still kind of meeting a lot of people. I still am, but. So it's not like I had tons of work that got canceled. I know that was the case with a lot of colleagues and friends here. It's like all of a sudden, months of work got canceled. Can you hear me, Tori? You still there?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I was just checking. I don't want to keep talking for 10 minutes and then realize we've been cut off.
Yeah.
And if I'm talking too much, then definitely let me know as well. So I didn't have that problem. In a way, work-wise for me, it was actually good, I have to say, because when I first moved to New York to do a master's degree at NYU, and I had a project that came out, from my master's thesis there that eventually became a book, which is and I started that kind of at the time when the pandemic hit. And what this book was interviews with a lot of great, legendary, master bass players, double bass players. And the fact that the pandemic hit right at that moment meant that everyone was sitting at home and had a lot of free time on their hands. So for me, for that particular project, that was really good, because it meant I was able to interview these wonderful masters that are usually very busy, and I probably would not have had a chance to talk to them had it not been for that, lockdown and those months where everything stopped. I mean, I had a record that came out in 2021. So that meant, I couldn't play, I couldn't do any shows, any release shows for that record. So that was kind of a downside as well. But again, all of this is, I think, what just affected the whole music community at large and everyone. It was so rough in New York the first month. I mean, now we're moving past it, so we forget how crazy it was. But a lot of people were dying. No one really knew what was happening. The streets were empty. Everything was shut down. So just being in good health and being able to live through that was already something to be grateful for. And then, now things seem to be going back to normal culture wise, and shows and all that. So that's good, really good.
Well, and it must feel good, because I know during that time it was a big deal because live music shut down. It must feel good to not only have a new album out, but live in Red Hook. How does this album feel overall for you?
It feels great. I have to say, it was the decision to do it was very spontaneous. So I guess that could be a word to describe this album, as the arc of this album, because I had released my previous album the year before, in 2022, because Live in Red Hook was recorded in it was recorded in 2022. So it took a while for it to come out, but we recorded it in the fall of 2022. And so I had a record that had just come out, and I was kind of, I love making records, but it could be, nowadays most of, or at least all the records I've done have been self-produced, even though they are on label. And that's kind of the trend with a lot of labels nowadays, is you get licensing deals, which means, they're licensing the music, but they're not necessarily producing it. I know there are, of course, still labels that do produce records, but I know the model has switched to licensing. So basically what that means is I'm self-producing my records, right? And that takes a lot of work and financial investment, time, and all that. So I was very happy that my record from 2022 had come out, but I wasn't necessarily ready to jump back into making another record. And so it happened that I had been curating a series of shows at this beautiful space in Red Hook called Coffee Street Studio. That it's not the name studio refers to it being an art studio and not a music studio, so it can be a little deceiving. But it's a beautiful space that's run by two visual artists. One is in theater, the other is a photographer, and the space is used mainly for that, for visual arts and performance art, but not so much music. And so that year we were talking about trying to get something going for music, and so I was curating this series that was, I guess the way to put it was, creative and original music. It was meant to be a space for people to come and present their music, or if it wasn't original music, but something that was improvised and creative music, right? Not come in and play standards, right? Not that I have anything against that. I love that, but you know what I'm saying. So it was kind of, that was the nature of the series. And so the series was coming to an end, and I hadn't performed there with any of my groups, and it kind of worked out in a way where the schedule, we had one more show to do in October, I guess it was. And, as it turned out that it worked well for me to do an evening there to kind of end the series. And so I decided to take that opportunity to record. And we actually ended up doing 2 evenings because it became a live recording. So we wanted to have time, to play. Yeah, and it really was spontaneous as well, because I had played with Jacob Sachs, who's the pianist, and I had played with Nathan Elman Bell on drums on several occasions, but we had only really played together as a trio once before. But when we did play, I really felt like there was something very special there in terms of just the overall balance of the trio, energy-wise, musically, just everything. It's there's something special about playing in trio that it has nothing to do with how good a musician is. There's just the way that all the personalities meet and the musical personalities meet in this space, and it had felt really special. And I just, a light went on in my mind. I said, well, we got this space. It's got a piano. The space is really nice. Let's do it. Let's record. And they were, available and happy to do it. So that's how it came about. So I do feel very good because it was born of a spontaneous idea and feeling, and our performance was very spontaneous as well, because I didn't want it to be, because it was a live recording, I really wanted to embrace the live aspect of it in terms of the improvisation and just meeting, with these two people I respect greatly as musicians, and bringing some music for us to play together and discover together on the spot, So we didn't rehearse and prepare like crazy. I sent them the music ahead of time for them to have a look, and then we played, So we were really discovering the music as we went along, even for me, because I had written the music, but I hadn't really performed the music as a bass player. So I was also discovering it as we went along. And so in that sense, I feel really good about it, because it's a very good snapshot of three people coming together and three improvisers coming together, jazz musicians, and playing through some music together and really listening and to each other and trusting each other.
So you've had an interesting journey. Born in France, lived in Morocco, and then Brazil, and there's all of these stops in between. So talk to me a little bit about how you got into not only music but jazz, and how that kind of grew into you, into the musician you are today.
Good question. Let me try to remember that. So I grew up in Brazil, which is basically the country I call home, because Morocco, that's where my parents were living at the time when I was born. And so I spent the first 2 years of my life there, and then we moved to Brazil. And so I grew up in Brazil, and I didn't start music that young. I mean, I had taken a few piano lessons maybe when I was 10 or something like that, and I remember really liking that. I was drawn to the piano and to music in general, but it wasn't until we moved. I grew up in a city called Belo Horizonte, it's still in the kind of southeast region of Brazil, but already moving north of São Paulo and Rio. And we moved to São Paulo when I was around 11 years old. And at that time, I had started listening to a little bit of rock and some music that was happening around me on the radio, some stuff, and also just some older stuff like classic rock, 70s, stuff like that. And around 12 or 13, I think, my brother had started playing guitar, and I wanted to play something as well. It kind of happened in a way following him, and just the interest in me started growing. And so I picked up the bass. I remember him saying, "No, you're not going to play guitar. You're going to play something else." So that was fine by me. For some reason, I was drawn to the bass. And then, just at that point, I was really just interested in that music I was listening to, like Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, hard rock, classic stuff. But as I got more into music and evolved as a player, I started just naturally branching out and wanting to hear different things and wanting to play different things. And that eventually led me to jazz. And I guess the gateway was, at one point someone said, "Oh man, you play bass, and you got to hear this guy Jaco Pastorius, of course, right?" And electric bass and all that. And through Jaco, that was kind of a gateway for me into jazz. I mean, I had already heard some stuff. I had an interest in it, but I didn't know anything, and so listening to Jaco is like, okay, well, Weather Report, and then Weather Report's like, oh, Joe Zawinul, that's Cannonball, that's Miles, and Train, and then bass, and then just go through, the list of influences that Jaco had and all the bass players, Ray Brown, Charles Mingus, Paul Chambers, and all that, and then just kind of pulling that thread, right? But it was kind of a something I did on my own in a way. We're really pulling the thread, like reading liner notes, reading about certain musicians who would always reference another album or another musician, and then just trying to get my hands on whatever record that was and listening to it. There wasn't really. Some people helped me through the way by giving me records, making me copies of stuff, tapes, and all that. But it wasn't like there was someone guiding my way through it. So it happened in a way of just me listening to, trying to get to all this music, and you start by the big names. I remember at one point this was the beginning of Amazon, but not Amazon the way we know it today. Amazon when it was just a bookshop, a bookstore, and then they started also selling CDs. And so I remember I was able to order 3 CDs. I remember these 3 in particular because it was Love Supreme, Shape of Jazz to Come, and I think it was Mingus which coincidentally they're all, I mean, Mingus if I'm not mistaken, that's 59 as well, and I think Shape of Jazz to Come is 59. I might be wrong there. I know Shape of Jazz to Come is 1959, but maybe I don't know, or it's around there.
It's around there. You're right.
Yeah. And the Love Supreme's not too far, so it's kind of a coincidence. But that was, I remember just getting those 3 records and listening to that. It was just like, it blew my mind in so many ways. I didn't really know what the hell was going on, but it was. And then from that point on, it's just the what's that expression? The cat's out of the bottle. Is that the expression? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
the cat's out of the bottle. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, and then it was, just like I said, just kind of making all these connections and just going after everything that I liked and also trying to tick some boxes of just making an education for myself. So, Count Basie and Duke Ellington, they're a big foundation. Lester Young, Bird, just all of that music, man. So, so I guess you probably noticed, but the interesting thing is I didn't go at it through the jazz that was happening at the time, like late 90s, early 2000. It was really going back to the beginning of the music, and then kind of working my way through the history of it. But I love that music, and so it wasn't like I didn't do it as an academic chore. It was really, I really loved Count Basie, and Count Basie Big Band was, the swingiest thing I had ever heard, and I loved it. It wasn't something I was listening to because I needed to, get an education or something like that. So I only, I still really haven't checked out a lot of more modern contemporary jazz. That's the truth.
So talk to me a little bit about, you've been at this for quite some time now. What is it that you like the best about being a professional musician?
Oh man. Well, the chance and opportunity to perform music on as regularly as possible. That's definitely one of those. One of the aspects of it. And meeting people who dedicate their lives to their craft and to music, and just getting this, always meeting new people with different approaches to music, to life, and being able to have that connection and exchange with these people, and be able to do that live as well, performing and then sharing all that with an audience. I guess that's I would say that's probably one of the aspects that I really cherish nowadays. Definitely not the money. We all know that.
Right. So at the end of the day, why do you love jazz?
Oh man, it's probably going to be for all the cliches we can imagine, but they are true. I mean, I love it for so many reasons. There's the rhythmic aspect of it. I think that's what really got me in the beginning. It really was a kind of visceral rhythm thing of how people were playing music, the swing, if you want, the rhythmic approach of this whole group of people and this culture that was here in the U.S. and developing their music, and with all the influences that we all know that have seeped into jazz, but just that feeling, the something that's swinging is like nothing else. It's like the same way when in Brazilian music it's swinging or grooving. You wouldn't use the word swing, right? But the kind of rhythmic, visceral element to it that for me was definitely it's definitely been a big hook. Always, there's just a rhythmic feel to the music that's amazing, and the explorations that it has yielded in that sense. You know, Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, think of all those guys and how they developed rhythm in their way, but still coming from that tradition and the swing and the feel and the time and all that. And then of course the improvisation and that whole, you know, element of the music is unbelievable too. You know, the fact that you can come together with someone else, with 4 or 5 other people, and make music and make it on the spot, and, you know, understand that you might have a structure or you might not, but that you can come together and make music based on all this experience that everyone has and brings, and that aspect is definitely, you know, it's not only, it doesn't only happen in jazz, but it definitely developed the way to this, you know, incredible level that we have today through jazz, you know, and so I would maybe that, you know, and then just I guess everything about it, you know, then the I was going to say also, you know, the melodies and the harmonies and all that, but I guess that's kind of obvious as well, you know, but I would probably highlight the rhythm and the rhythmic feel and all that, and improvisation as the things that really draw me to the music.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you as the maker of this music. Family, friends, fans, but you ultimately are the one that's in charge of your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, man. I don't know. You tell me.
Right. That's it.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, I could maybe I could probably only answer the way like who I would like to be or who I am trying to be every day, you know, and that is someone who is trying to bring something good into the world, you know, and that can happen through music sometimes, and in general music has that power, no matter the music, I would say, or I would like to think that, but also every day, you know, bringing kindness, being, you know, connecting to people, being present, and I try to do that through music and through the music that I choose to do as a band leader, right? And I guess inadvertently as well, the music I do as a side person as well, you know, I think affinities line up in that way, you know. I don't know if that answers it, but that's maybe, you know, a feeling I get from that question.
No, absolutely. No, that's you nailed it. So if anyone wants to pick up the live album, see you live, any of the good business, where's the best place to go? The albums are all available a little bit everywhere, you know, all the streaming platforms and all that. I would encourage people, and not because it's my album, I would say this in general, people who like music, I would encourage them to always purchase the music of the artist they like, right? Again, I'm not saying you have to buy my record, but in general, that's something that goes a long way. And so for that, one good place is usually Bandcamp. It's something there's a platform that has a very fair system in place where artists get most of the revenue, right? So that's one place. My records are available there too, you know. As far as live concerts, we don't have anything with the trio coming up as of yet with Jacob and Nathan. We had a couple concerts in March and February. I'd say the next thing I have that's, you know, as I'm trying to think. I mean, there are always things as a sideman, but well, there's something coming up in April. There's going to be a first concert that we're doing with some people we played together a couple times. We're happy to play together, so we're doing this first concert. Hopefully, the first of many. We'll see, but it'll be at Bar Bayou on April 20th with Carmen's staff on piano. She's an amazing piano player. You might have heard of her. Mike McGuinness on clarinet, who's an amazing clarinet player.
composer. They both are as well. And Hamir, whose last name I don't even remember, just to show you how much we're just kind of kicking this off. But Hamir is a wonderful drummer from, I know he was out in California, and he moved recently to New York, and he and Carmen played a bit, and we played a couple times, and so we got this gig coming up, and that should be fun. We'll play some of our, respective original music and some music that we all like, and so I'm looking forward to that.
Man, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thanks for talking about the new material, and best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Brazil, Paris, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Guy for his time, energy, and story. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.